In this century, Hollywood has been dominated by three types of films: IP, sequels, and remakes. And often, films are a combination of these. Obviously, a film should stand on its own merit, but the sheer dominance of these aspects of films makes modern cinema very tiresome and uninspiring. People are getting sick of this and are increasingly reluctant to spend their hard earned money to go to a cinema that's showing so many films that are adaptations of franchises or sequels in a franchise or a new version of something that has already been well done in the past. Remakes are especially problematic, as they are always remakes of films that were perfectly good in the first place. Last year, audiences were treated to a new version of The Crow, which was widely mocked and an incredible failure. This year, we'll see a new version of The Running Man, and a new version of American Psycho has already been announced. Successful, classic, and well-liked films are the exclusive targets of this process, as studios are too cowardly to try and improve on something that failed in the past. However, there are some good reasons for having another try at a great film. Maybe special effects can realise a vision that was hampered by a lack of technology. Maybe there are modern contexts that can bring a new perspective to a story. Or maybe there's another way to adapt some IP, something more authentic to the original. This year, my cinema experience has started with a remake that has been getting a lot of positive attention from many of the usual suspects who complain about modern Hollywood. Nosferatu is a remake of the classic 1922 German expressionist silent film that was loosely based on the novel Dracula, despite the producers not having the rights to make the film. All prints were supposed to have been destroyed as part of a court settlement after Bram Stoker's estate sued, but prints survived and the film became an iconic classic that influenced both horror and cinema in general. The new version was written and directed by Robert Eggers and stars Bill Skarsgård as a titular character, who's also known as Count Orlok, Nicholas Hoult, Lily Rose Depp, Aaron Taylor-Johnson, Emma Corrin, Willem Dafoe, Ralph Ineson, and Simon McBurney. It's a story of Ellen, played by Depp, who is the target of the malevolent Count Orlok, who has tormented her from a young age with his lustful desire for her. Knock, played by McBurney, who is in league with the Count, sends Ellen's husband Thomas, played by Holt, to complete a property purchase. Orlok tricks him into signing a cult contract to give him Ellen, and then tries and fails to eliminate him. Orlok travels to claim Ellen in Germany, and Thomas makes it back to face down the menace that seeks to take his love. The story is a classic of obsessive love, dark desires, the occult, religion, science, female sexuality, and male dominance. It's a moody, slow-burning, atmospheric drama that, given that it's heavily based on Dracula, ticks all the boxes one would expect from a vampire film set in 19th century Europe. I've never seen the original beyond the usual clips that appear on TV shows about the genre, or music videos such as Under Pressure by Queen and David Bowie. I remember when I was a kid, I saw those clips and I was pretty terrified. The original is a classic because it pioneered and established many of the tropes of the horror genre and influenced and inspired countless filmmakers, writers, musicians, and artists of the 20th century. It's a film that horror directors and writers have aspired to emulate, so thank God some of those prints survived the legally mandated deletion. Because I never saw the original, I get to enjoy this film from a blank slate. I don't have any bias or preconceived notions regarding this version of how this story should be told. To me, this is just another film to watch and it stands on its own merit. I can't compare it to the original. First of all, I'm going to start with the genre. Technically, this is a horror, but I disagree. This is more of a thriller. There's only one jump scare, which is at the start, and isn't such a big thing. After that, the story is much more about the subtle interplay between characters and the cinematography that keeps the monstrous Orlok hidden to the audience for so long, generating his menacing presence with shadows and the otherworldly tone of his voice. This is more of a cat and mouse game involving deceit and threats, rather than a creature feature relying on blood and guts. Visually, it's stunningly bleak. The nighttime shots look almost black and white, evoking the cold of the season of the story is set in. Shadows do a lot of heavy lifting, keeping Orlok partially hidden right until the last scene, when his full horror is finally and briefly revealed. My favourite part is the dialogue. The story is set in Germany in 1838, and the language feels authentic. Obviously, it's English, but it feels like the English that would have been common for that time. It sounds very formal and grammatically correct to my ears, but for the time it was probably colloquial and common. A lot of effort must have gone into avoiding contractions and using relatively archaic words that these days would only be used by pretentious know-it-alls who think it makes them sound highbrow. The script is tight and nothing happens that doesn't push the story along. There are very few characters and each one has their purpose and effect on the story. There's no wastage or over-the-top exposition, which is the bane of so many films in recent years, where writers don't seem to understand the concept of show, not tell. It's a long film, 2 hours, 12 minutes, but every second feels like it needs to be there. Overall, I like this film. I wasn't dazzled, and I think some of the reviews I've seen are a little too generous in their praise, but I get it. It's a remake that is actually worthwhile and a horror that doesn't go in for cheap gimmicks. So far, it's received a number of nominations on awards, and cinematography rightly appears almost every time. There are numerous examples for art direction, hair and makeup, costume design and writing too. It doesn't have anything for the Golden Globes, but when the Oscars announce their nominations, I would expect more than one on the technical side, and also screenplay. It's not that the acting isn't good enough, it's actually excellent, but I don't think any of it is stand out enough for any chance of one of those little statues, and it's unlikely to get Best Director or Best Film. It's a very good film and definitely worth the £9.99 for the recliner seated view. If you're the kind of person who doesn't like horror, I think it's still worth it, as the horror isn't extreme or front and centre. There's some gore, but it's not over the top, and I don't think you'll be losing any sleep worrying what's under your bed. This is a good film, and I definitely recommend it. One more thing though, seeing Nicholas Hoult standing a couple of inches taller than Aaron Taylor-Johnson and seeing him as Lex Luthor in the trailer for the new Superman film, I wonder, why does he not seem to be in the mix for the next James Bond?